Hey everybody, thanks for joining us for What a Week. Chris McKinnon here with John Keller. And John, it is another busy week to talk about.
What's that old saying? TGIF? I know you probably haven't heard that in a while.
But it's TGIF for sure,
Big time.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
For commuters here in Boston, a lot of them TGIF, because let's talk about this. So red line derailment comes a couple days after we had the green line derailment that happened over the weekend, last weekend. And now there's some calls for Governor Baker to maybe ride the T, talk about funding, because let's talk about it. It's like at a breaking point, literally, right now.
It's a nightmare for people. It's an economic problem. It's a social problem, and it's a personal disaster for many people. And we're going to be living with the effects, apparently, of this red line derailment for some time because it took out all this complicated hardware. Look, the bottom line politically here is that Governor Baker remains highly popular. Boston Globe poll just out this week shows that a strong majority of people want him to run for a third term. He just got reelected to the second one. And all along, over these last 5 years or so, poll after poll has shown people don't blame Baker for the problems with the T. The people clamoring for him to either ride the T himself or, more seriously, to drop his opposition to new broad-based taxes to help fund the T are pretty much the usual suspects who've been clamoring for that all along. It hasn't gotten political traction. Will it this time? I mean, definitely there are angry people, and they're going to be even angrier when the fare hike kicks in July, but I have my doubts about whether you're going to see that. So far, Governor Baker says we're going to stay the course, and I take him at his word.
I was going to say, they've tried this kind of attack to pin it all on Baker before, and it hasn't worked.
Without much effect, that's right.
On Capitol Hill down in Washington, D.C., we saw a very emotional moment in front of a subcommittee where Jon Stewart, former host of The Daily Show, was talking about re-upping the funds for 9/11 first responders, and that funding. Your kind of take on this one, this whole optics of it, too. It was a very powerful moment with all these first responders right behind him.
You know, I hate to say it because you would think that, gee, we elect our representatives and they go down there and they should want to do the right thing and they shouldn't need to be shamed this way. But often this is what happens. This is why a lot of times it takes media coverage of an issue for our politicians to act. Not always, but all too often, I'd say. In this case, you know, you had all the elements, as you say. You had an eloquent speaker, very emotional, speaking off the cuff. You had very sympathetic victims, in this case, the first responders. And you had that optic of the empty seats. And now that was a little disingenuous because it was a subcommittee hearing. Those often are not always attended. Members will monitor them while they're doing other things. However, it sure made for a great visual there. And in fact, the next day, boom, they went ahead and passed it. And I have to say, you know, Stewart had a very compelling point there. What is a higher priority for our tax dollars than to help the men and women whose health and lives were compromised by doing their duty in that moment of our national trauma? I can't imagine anything, and so I think that's why you saw action.
Action right away. It wasn't just a New York situation, a New York issue. It was a national.
Everybody can understand all these elements, I think.
Last thing we want to talk about this week. It's hard to pick all the topics this week, right? President Trump doing a one-on-one with George Stephanopoulos, and the topic of political opposition research or information from foreign powers came up again. And President Trump said, yeah, I'd like to think I'd listen to it and maybe call the FBI. What do you think about this? And the fact that it's come up again, it's just another dogged issue for him.
It was a stupid thing to say. Politically stupid. I'll set aside the rest. Because first of all, it's another huge dry log on the already roaring fire of Trump animus. So his enemies are just orbiting the earth over this thing. They're often orbiting the earth over things he says, but this really strikes at the core. The broader problem for the president is, look, poll after poll shows people don't want to see impeachment. over the Mueller report and what it found, you know, the famous meeting at Trump Tower, where they were embracing this Oppo research from Russian operatives. But the bottom line is, those same polls show people don't believe the president's version of events, and they don't like the idea of Russian interference in our election. So for him to say that as if, oh, it's nothing, you know, what if Norway came to me with Oppo research? You know, his groupies will nod their heads sagely and swallow that. No one else will. And in and of itself, it's not, you know, what's that horrible cliche? A game changer. I hate that. I can't even believe I just said it. But in this case, it describes it. It's not that it's that. It's that it's just another brick in a wall that the president himself is so busily building that's going to wall him off from potential supporters a year from next November.
I thought one of the interesting things that came out of that, too, is he directly contradicted the director of the FBI, his director, and he said he's wrong that we would have to immediately tell the FBI about something like this.
You ever have a friend or an acquaintance?
No, I have not.
No.
I'm just kidding.
Who always insists they're right, they're never wrong about anything. What happens to that relationship over time?
Yeah, not very good.
No, it doesn't go down very smoothly. So this is a problem. I mean, the president keeps insisting he's never wrong. Does he ever apologize for anything? Hardly ever. I think that's problematic for a lot of the kind of undecided or swing voters that he's going to need in November of 2020.
All right, sounds good, John. Always appreciate
Have a great weekend, buddy.
Info. Appreciate it. You too. And you as well. And we'll see you next week for What a Week.